It's Skillset here with another video on Terraform and AWS. For those of you recently trying to get into Terraform and trying to find out what kind of tool it is, well, hopefully I'll give you an idea with this video. Put basically, it's a tool that's allowing us to deploy, version, and destroy infrastructure in clouds. In this case, a public cloud, and I'm using Amazon as an example. So first things first, to follow along at home, you would need your own Amazon account, and I've already created mine, and this is how it looks like when you log in. The first things you want to make sure you do is you have an account for programmatic access, and you do that by going to IAM and make sure you already have a user created, and that user should have. Well, in my case, I've given it all the access in the world so that it can do and what it wants to any service in Amazon. This is quite a dangerous thing, but if you just, this is for testing, so it's fine. With regards to security credentials, you need to have a programmatic access enabled and this key generated. You'll be able to download it once you create this user and create the keys. So I can put some links in the descriptions of this video on how to do that. And once you have those access keys and the access ID, you need to then go onto your terminal and actually make sure you configure your credentials and your other AWS config in your home folder so that Terraform can reach it. So what you should do is make sure you have a home directory created. Within that, you should have an AWS directory created as such, and you should place your credentials in a file called credentials like this, as well as you should then place your other config. Right now I got a couple default things where I define my region and the format, the output I want to see when I run things against AWS API, and that's JSON. So I'll define those two things. Another thing is you should never be showing your credentials to anyone else, but in this case I'm giving you an idea. So, and I'm going to delete this account soon, so yeah, you can see it. So once that's done, you also have to make sure you have Terraform installed. So to install Terraform, you need to go and search for Terraform download on Google, and once you get there, you can select your flavor of choice, whatever OS you're running, whether it be Windows, Mac. So I'm running Mac, and I've already installed it. And well, when you download it, you only get a binary, and in this case, what I've done is gone ahead and copied that binary executable into my user local bin folder so that it's accessible from anywhere. So if I'm running my first ever Terraform command, say I want to check its version, I can run it from anywhere, because right now I'm in my home directory in a subfolder, but I'm able to run this command. So that's what you want to set up and make sure you have set up. So once you have your credentials, as I showed you, in your home directory in the .aws directory that you should create, just like this, and you got your Terraform binary set up as well, ready to go, you should be able to then run a Terraform init command. This pretty much initializes everything, but obviously to have this running, you need to also make sure that you're in the directory where your Terraform code lives. And before I actually run that init, I'll show you a bit of that code that relates to this init. So this is the actual. So if you check inside this Terraform directory, I've got a few files. The main one we want to pay attention to is the main.tf file, and in that file is where I've defined, as you can see. Now it's not a great way to define all these different bits and bobs in the same Terraform code file. In the sense, in production you would never have this sort of file. You would have these set up in subdirectories and different TF files, but for this test purpose, I've put it all in one big file. So my provider section here, as I've commented out, all I've done is define the provider that I'm going to use. So it means the cloud that I'm going to hit against. And in this case, it's AWS, and I've also defined the region that I'm going to use. Oh, and this is not Sydney. This is California, I think. Yes, yeah. And yeah, so that's what you need to set up before you actually run your Terraform init command. So once you've actually coded this part, you're able to save this file and actually go into the same directory where that file exists, which is this directory here, and run your first Terraform command, which is terraform init. Now that should be running successfully, and from then on, now you're actually ready to start coding your first bit of code in Terraform. So as I said, I've got everything in one file here. So I've got one variable set up and a bunch of resources. And as for today's exercise, my purpose here is to actually launch a EC2 instance in a auto scaling group, and also have a load balancer in front of that. So all this code I'm going to link in the description to my GitHub repo, which you'll be able to access and download and then run. So first things first, once we've done the initialization, we're going to go ahead and then run a Terraform plan. Now with the Terraform plan, it'll obviously go through all the different resources that we've defined in this file, the main.tf file. It'll look at the launch configuration, which is pretty much a way to say deploy an EC2 instance, and it'll look at the AWS autoscaling group configuration. It'll look at all these other different resources that I've defined, the load balancer, the security groups, and then pretty much go through a plan where it's going to say, hey, I'm going to deploy a bunch of things. And right now, as you can see down here, it's planning to deploy 5 different resources, and those are these as per what I have defined in my main.tf file. It's quite straightforward. So once this plan runs smoothly, you're then able to actually start and kick off the deployment. So the way we kick off the deployment is using a command called terraform apply. And with that command, I'm also going to add, well, no, I'm not going to add any other flags, just to keep it simple. And let's kick that off. So when this command starts running, you should be able to actually then log on to go back onto your AWS account, go to the EC2 service, because that's what we're deploying today. We are deploying a bunch of servers, a load balancer, and an auto scaling group. So the first things first, you can actually see if I check on the instances. Right now there's no actually current running instances. These are my old terminated instances. And what I'm going to do here with the apply command, it's going to print out that output again, say, and ask you a question, are these the actions you want to continue with? You're going to say simply yes, click enter, and it'll go on its way. And the first thing it's doing is creating a security group for my instance, and then a security group for my load balancer. And there you go, they've completed. And then it's going to create the launch configuration, which needs to be there for my auto scaling group to work. And that's what's happening now. So once that launch configuration is completed, as you can see further down here, it's gone on to finish off creating the load balancer, and right now it's creating the auto scaling group, and we can actually see what's happening in the background here. So if you go to the auto scaling group section of the EC2 console, you'll see an auto scaling group has been created, and if you click on the activity history tab, you'll see it's trying to actually deploy 2 instances, because obviously we've defined in our code that the minimum instance for our auto-scaling group to be 2. So it will always try to get to that state. So an auto-scaling group is pretty much what it's simple as it is defined here. It will try to deploy 2 instances and keep that desired state at any given time. So as you can see, it says it's completed its job. Terraform has completed its job. We go back to the console, and we should be able to then go to the instance section and kind of refresh that console, and you should see, there we go. 2 instances are up and running. And if you go back to the auto scaling groups, you also see that 2 instances should be attached to this auto scaling group, and they're in service and they're in a healthy state. So I'll wait for a bit longer until until this is running and the initialization is completed. Until then, I'll come back to the code and also go through something important here, which is the output definition. So with Terraform, you got your provider, which is what you need to initialize Terraform, your variables, what you need to to use during your resource definitions. Whatever variables you need, you can define up here. And these are my different resources: my load balancer, my auto scaling group, my security groups for my load balancer and my instances. And then we come to this last part, which is the actual output, which we get at the end of that Terraform run. And what I've set that to is the actual load balancer DNS. So that means the URL that I'm able to hit to verify that my web service is running. And I've done a little bit of injected a bit of HTML in here to my web instance so that we'll be able to test it as well. So this is what we see in this Terraform run actually. So at the end, it has outputted something here as I'm highlighting, and that's the actual DNS name that we can go on to from a browser and see if our web service is actually running. So I'm going to copy that at this point. Oh, great. And during that time of us looking at the code, our 2 instances have passed all the health checks, and it's ready. And that means we should be able to open up a new browser. And actually, so I've copied this URL here. Should be able to log on to this URL if all is well. And there we go. And that brings us to the end of this video. If you liked it, please share, subscribe, and like, and look forward to more of the same from Skillset in the future. Thank you. Bye-bye.